How do you do? I'm Anthony Davis from 5 Minute News here on the MeidasTouch network to take a look at the January 6 committee hearing. People were saying it was the final hearing, but now things maybe have changed. So let's just explain what happened and why it was that there was this push to get this kind of last televised hearing on before the midterms. It's been said, widely said, that if the Republicans were to take control of the House and the Senate in November, then they'll shut down the January 6 committee. So obviously there was some pressure to get this final act televised. But an awful lot happened. You've probably already heard how it ended up and where Benny Thompson took this investigation, this televised episode, with a subpoena for the man at the very centre of this insurrection, the former President Donald J. Trump. So, will Trump testify? How will they force him to? Will he show up and plead the fifth? Will they do it in private, in a recorded testimony, or will he have to face the cameras? Let's consider just for a moment that Donald Trump has said that this entire committee is illegitimate. He's said that it's not bipartisan, despite there being two effectively senior Republicans on the committee in Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. But he's also, said that it's a witch hunt and that it's illegitimate because he doesn't get to have his say. Well, now he does. Now he has the opportunity to come and face the committee and give his side of the story. He won't do it, will he? He'll probably try and put this into the courts. He'll probably try and fight this subpoena at every juncture to slow things down, to wait and wait until such time that there is no committee anymore. But that's not the end of his problems, is it? Because it's very likely that, and we kind of heard today, that the committee is going to be recommending to the Department of Justice that serious criminal activity took place at the very top of the executive branch. And the cast of characters, many of whom were interviewed, will have to face the DOJ for their crimes. So let's just look chronologically at what happened today. It started at, it was a kind of 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I think, 10, 11, 12, 1. Yeah, for me on the West Coast, it was 10 a.m., 1 o'clock for those on the East Coast, with the chair, Benny Thompson, starting off the hearing by making the case that its work is not politically motivated, but rather a bipartisan attempt to get to the bottom of a shocking act of violence targeting a pillar of American democracy. And for me, this is the reason why Republicans claim this is an illegitimate investigation, because they care not for democracy anymore. Democracy didn't work for them last time. And so redistricting and gerrymandering and goodness knows what else that's going on behind the scenes is how they plan to win in November, in the midterms, to effectively cheat. Benny Thompson said that over the course of these hearings, the evidence has proven that there was a multi-part plan led by former President Donald Trump to overturn the 2020 election. And so Benny Thompson appealed to the public to view the committee's work as separate from politics. And this is what I think people fail to realize. In fact, I read a survey, I think CNN posted this survey that was done saying, what is more important to the American people, the state of the economy or the attack on democracy, with the insurrection and everything else. They chose the economy. I mean, to me, that is the United States in a nutshell. This feeling that, their freedom, democracy, the system will continue no matter what happens, not realizing quite how fragile the very fabric of democracy is. What's the point in even caring an iota about the economy? Because if you don't have a system, if you don't have a constitutional democracy, then you're not going to have an economy. It just doesn't make sense to me. And maybe people just don't realise. It's been around for 240-odd years, so people just take it for granted now. Benny Thompson said, "We understand that some people watching those proceedings would wrongly assume that the committee's investigation was a partisan exercise. That's why we asked those who were sceptical of our work to simply listen to the evidence, to hear the testimony with an open mind, and to let the facts speak for themselves before reaching any judgment." I mean, this is the thing that I've tried to explain, certainly in my Twitter narrative and some of the arguments I've had with a few Republicans online, and that is that all of the evidence, the damning, revealing testimony, has come from former officials in Trump's Republican administration, campaign workers, GOP officials at the state level. This is not Democrats going, we don't like you. No, it's not that. It's irrelevant if you don't think it's a bipartisan committee. All of the evidence is from people who worked for Trump, who were in the administration, who wanted Trump to win the election, and yet felt compelled to tell the truth about what went on. This is no witch hunt. This is democracy in action. Benny Thompson said, "When you look back at what has come out through the committee's work, the most striking fact is that all this evidence comes almost entirely from Republicans." And then, of course, it was time for Liz Cheney to speak up, the Republican co-chair of the committee. And she made clear what the message of the hearing would be. She said the central cause of January 6 was one man, Donald Trump, who many others followed. She said none of this would have happened without him. He was personally and substantially involved in all of it. And she said that they were going to focus on Trump's state of mind, his intent, his motivations, and how he spurred others to do his bidding. And how another January 6 could happen again if they don't take the necessary action to prevent it. She said other things that Trump was a central cause of: Cheney losing the Republican primary in Wyoming 2 months ago, ensuring she won't return to Congress next year. I mean, this is the sadness, really, isn't it? That Liz Cheney has now been widely rejected by Republicans for standing up for U.S. democracy. And I've said many times before, and it might just be semantics, but the fact that democracy features the word Democrat, that these are born of the same meaning, I personally believe is the reason why many Republicans don't care for democracy, because it's effectively supporting a Democratic cause, a Democrat cause, the enemy's cause. Democratic Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren took over from Liz Cheney and aired evidence showing Trump ignoring the advice of his advisors to encourage more mail-in voting, and planned well in advance to declare victory even before all of the ballots had been counted. And this, for me, was the most compelling part of this, that it was absolutely the plan. It was corroborated by Roger Stone. Steve Bannon, in his own podcast, said that this is what is going to happen. They're effectively going to just, once the count is done, because of the way that the ballots are counted, it'll look like Trump is in the lead first, and that's when they're going to call it for Trump and say, okay, stop counting, Trump's won. I mean, can you actually get your head around the fact that this happened in the United States of America, a place that I moved to because I wanted to live amongst one of the freest democracies in the world, which incidentally has now dropped to number 26 on the world freedom rankings. US democracy is not safe anymore, courtesy of the insurrection on January 6. And the consistent lies that even now Donald Trump, whilst he's pretending to still be the president in Mar-a-Lago in his fake Oval Office, wearing the badge and having people call him Mr. President, he still maintains that he won. Just think about that for a moment. A president of the United States not agreeing to a peaceful transfer of power. I mean, it's almost like we take it for granted now. Oh, yeah, well, he says he won and the other guy won. Let's not allow this insanity to become normalized. So we know effectively now that Trump planned to call this election victory for himself, whatever the outcome. He didn't care. And this really is the nub of this whole investigation, is that Trump knew he was losing. He intended to declare victory. He, despite all of the evidence, losing 62 court cases and having all of his advisors, as we saw in today's hearing, all of his advisors, everybody, from Bill Barr right the way down, all of his press people and everybody, they all said that the election was over, and he refused to accept it. And he was even overheard by Cassidy Hutchinson, an assistant to the chief of staff, walking down the corridor saying, "We cannot have people know that we lost. We need to do something about this." So much stuff came of this. Even Trump ordering the withdrawal of American troops from Somalia and Afghanistan before Joe Biden was to take office in late January. Ordering it. Signing off on it. Arguably one of the most dangerous things that you can do, requesting an instant withdrawal of all troops. That's not how the military operates. This guy was out of his mind and still is. And this is the effect of allowing somebody who is so mentally and emotionally unstable to hold office. And he's always been like this. You know, this isn't age. This isn't something that's recent. Donald Trump is not a well man. And yet, he's a very good actor. He's a very good salesman. He's a very good presenter. Arguably, he's much more capable in front of the camera than Joe Biden is. Joe Biden, who is A, little older, but B, has a lifelong speech impediment that he overcomes. You can't compare them like for like. And tragically, the right uses these idiosyncrasies to claim that Joe Biden is not of sound mind when nothing could be further from the truth. You know, he is all there, and he knows what's at stake. And I think this is the difference between Democrats and Republicans, is that Democrats really do care about the country for everybody, for Republicans as well. You don't hear Democrats coming up with names or slagging off Republicans in the same way that Republicans criticize Democrats. Because Democrats care for democracy, which means having everybody get their vote. And Republicans, and clearly in the case of MAGA Republicans, they don't want people to vote. They want to call off the count when Trump is in the lead. So, at the hearing, the January 6th committee plans to subpoena Donald Trump. This is ultimately what has come out of this. I mean, there's a lot more, and maybe in another video I'll go into even deeper detail about what went on. But I just want to mention one thing before we finish, and that is that time and time again I've heard MAGA Republicans claim that Nancy Pelosi should have been the one to call in the National Guard. The whole riot and the insurrection was her fault, the Speaker of the House, because she didn't call in the National Guard. We discovered in today's hearing that that is not the case. We discovered with compelling video evidence. It was actually a 40-minute video that was filmed by Nancy Pelosi's daughter, who herself is a documentary filmmaker, and was there on the day because she wanted to witness this, momentous day. Not the riot. She wanted to witness the certification of the Electoral College and Joe Biden's win. She ended up recording the events with a very different mindset. We hadn't seen this video before, that this was high-quality video following Nancy Pelosi being evacuated from the Capitol building and taken to a secure location and calling the National Guard with Chuck Schumer and even with members of the Republican Party as well, all doing what Donald Trump didn't do, trying to bring order, to end the violence, and to restore democracy. So, the January 6th committee has unanimously voted to subpoena Donald Trump in a long shot attempt, I should say, to compel his testimony before the bipartisan congressional panel investigating his supporters' attack on the U.S. Capitol. Benny Thompson said, "We have left no doubt knowing that Donald Trump led an effort to upend American democracy that directly resulted in the violence of January 6. He is the one person at the center of the story of what happened on January 6, and we want to hear from him." As I say, Trump is certain to challenge the subpoena. He would certainly plead the fifth. And the other thing I found most interesting is all of the senior players involved in this. Everybody, from Jeffrey Clark, who was installed as an attorney general at the 11th hour to do Trump's bidding to try and overturn the election, they all pleaded the fifth. The man in the hat, the lawyer that Donald Trump spoke with on stage prior to the riot, pleaded the fifth. Anybody and everybody who was central to this, who spoke with Donald Trump in the last minutes and hours leading up to this riot, and indeed during and after, whilst Donald Trump was watching it all unfold on television in the dining room of the Oval Office, they all pleaded the fifth. Clearly, some agreement amongst them all to keep quiet for the sake of their dictator, their supreme leader, Donald J. Trump. I'm Anthony Davis. You can hear me every day on the 5-Minute News podcast and on Sundays on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs, "It wasn't rigged, you're just a loser," at store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.